Over 30 years ago, one of America's most prestigious Ivy League universities offered a course in Mandarin, which for years had virtually no takers. Today, there is standing room only. And it is not because the course is any easier. It is because the position of China has changed. 30 years ago, 20 years ago, China was nowhere near where it is today. China does not ask for anyone for respect now. She does not need it. Let us make our continent the prosperous and joyful place it should be, and the respect would follow. I thank you for your attention.
You guys are going to turn the prompter on? Let's see. That looks really good on the left, at least. Looks good on the left.
Please welcome Wally Adeyemo, Deputy Secretary of the Treasury.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. And as they mentioned, my name is Wally Adeyemo, and I am the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. And I want to thank the President of Ghana for being here today and for his efforts to strengthen the African diaspora community. The success of Ghana's Year of the Return in 2019 is an inspiring example of how to draw on the United States' large and engaged diaspora communities to build closer ties between Ghana, Africa, more broadly, and the United States. For me, a number of my friends had an opportunity to go to the continent for the first time during the Year of the Return, and to think about their role and their relationship with the continent that we have all come from. The diaspora's role in shaping America's society and culture and the way its members contribute to the dynamism of our economy are themes that are deeply personal to me. The story of the African American diaspora is one that is part of my story. My parents, although they raised me in Southern California, came to this country with me in hand, immigrating here from Nigeria. I know firsthand a few Nigerians in the crowd, and while they brought me from Nigeria, like many African stories, they touched on many different countries in their journey in Africa. Growing up in Ghana, oftentimes in our house, We had kenke for dinner at the same time that you would have foods from Nigeria. So it spoke to the diversity of experiences that Africans bring to this country all the time. And I think that bringing that perspective to the Treasury Department, where I have the ability to serve the American people, adds to the rich legacy of this country as well, a country built on immigration. And the contributions the members of the diaspora make here, big and small, matter greatly to the United States economy and to our culture. But the diaspora also contributes to Africa. A Brookings study estimates the diaspora last year contributed $46 billion in remittances to Africa. And beyond the economic contributions, the people-to-people engagements creates ties that imbued this country and Africa with deep knowledge and a shared sense of common aspiration. Strengthening this community at forums like this one allows us to cement and deepen the ties. In doing so, we exchange openly and freely about challenges, and I'm aware of the multiple shocks African countries face today, and it's something that we should speak about openly and transparently. As all of you know, I am not the most senior person to serve in the U.S. government from the African diaspora. I had an opportunity to work for President Obama, both in his administration, but also helping to run his foundation. And part of what all of us know as young leaders in the African diaspora, and I consider myself part of this community, is that critical to our abilities to succeed is being able to see ourselves in leaders who have come before us, finding the type of mentors and examples that have blazed a path for us. And today I have the ability to introduce one of those mentors for me, one of those leaders who have blazed a path that has allowed me to be in the role that I'm in today, and that is Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Seat. Good afternoon. To Deputy Secretary Adeyemo, thank you for all you do. I will tell you what many of you probably know about him from the implementation of the American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act to your sights, Wally, on what is important about strengthening economic relationships in Africa and around the world. You have been an extraordinary leader, and so to our Deputy Secretary of Treasury, let us please applaud his great role of leadership. President Akufo-Addo, it is wonderful to see you back in Washington again. I thank you for your work to strengthen the ties between our nations and our people. And to my dear friend, Cory Booker, Senator Cory Booker, thank you for always being a voice in the United States Senate on the importance of the U.S.-Africa relationship. And to the hundreds of young leaders from Africa and around the United States who are with us today, welcome. And thank you for your leadership and participation. So it is fitting that we gather here today in this magnificent and historic museum. The shape of this building is inspired by Yoruba art from West Africa. The metal lattice work that you see outside that surrounds the building is inspired by the intricate iron work crafted by enslaved American and throughout, in particular, the South, but African Americans who were enslaved in the United States. The building and many of the collections it holds are intended as a powerful reminder of the brutality of slavery and of the intertwined history between Africa and America, including our ongoing connections. It is a reminder of the strength and resilience of the African American people and the contributions of African Americans to our country. Africa is the oldest inhabited continent in the world, and it is home to the youngest population in the world. So Africa cannot help but be in the future business. I strongly believe that the creativity and ingenuity of Africa's young leaders will help us shape the future of the world, and that their ideas, your ideas, and innovations and initiatives will benefit the entire world. The Biden-Harris administration intends to be right there alongside you, these young leaders, knowing it is the spark and determination of young people that will drive and move us forward. And we are particularly excited about this future, as we are to host the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit this week. In the coming days, as well as the months and years ahead, our administration will invest our time and our energy to fortify partnerships across the continent. Partnerships that, importantly, are grounded in candor, openness, inclusiveness, shared interests, and mutual benefits. And overall, our administration will be guided not by what we can do for Africa, but what we can do with Africa. In recent decades, the United States and African countries have worked together to spur economic growth and expand trade capacity across the continent. We have worked together to prevent more than 1 billion cases of malaria and to help more than 22 million people living with HIV/AIDS. Since the beginning of our administration, the United States has invested and plans to provide more than $19 billion for public health and to combat COVID-19, $3.3 billion in medium and long-term agriculture and food security investments, $10 billion in emergency food security programming, and $4 billion in development. We are focused on working with the countries of Africa to address current challenges, as well as to promote long-term growth and innovation. Together, as we continue to advance our partnership in health, in development, and good governance, we are also addressing the need for climate resilience and clean energy, food security, access to finance, and digital technology. In the past 2 years, we have made important progress together, and we must, and we will, do more. Which brings me back then to Africa's young leaders. Just consider, 60% of the population of Africa is under the age of 25. That is nearly 850 million young people on the continent. And by 2050, that figure will grow to 1.2 billion people. 1.2 billion young people. This represents an enormous potential for the world in terms of economic growth and for social and political progress. And so within the next 2 years, the Biden-Harris administration would have invested more than $1 billion in education and youth programming in Africa, which will allow us to further our partnership with African academic institutions and the private sector on education and research in science, technology, engineering, and math. And it will allow us to expand our signature program for African youth, the Young African Leaders Initiative, also known as YALI. As the YALI alumni in the audience know, each year, fellows travel to colleges and universities in the United States for 6 weeks to study. They study business, civic engagement, or public management. We also developed YALI regional leadership centers to provide a similar experience at higher education institutions in Ghana, Kenya, Senegal, and South Africa. Through these experiences, these leaders join a continent-wide network of young leaders. Currently, more than 640,000 young Africans participate in the YALI network. In fact, today, yes. And today I actually met with some of the distinguished alumni, including a young woman who has worked to provide access to clean water for rural communities in Benin. I have met with Cecilia from Zambia, who is a social work student and created projects that provide leadership training to more than 1,000 young people a week. And Ian, who created an organization in Tanzania that uses animation, comics, and radio stories to encourage young people to participate in social change. And to build on these successes, it is now my great pleasure to launch the next phase of YALI, a new investment of $100 million with which we will expand networking for alumni and connect them with social impact and business investors. And in so doing, we will continue to foster the ingenuity and creativity of young African leaders. These young leaders, the majority of whom were born in the 21st century, are coming of age on a continent with a vibrant spirit of entrepreneurship, from the tech hubs of Cairo and Nairobi to the incubators of Accra and Cape Town. African innovation benefits the entire world. Think of the Kenyan innovators who created a local mobile payment system that transformed global payment systems, or the Ethiopian startup that uses artificial intelligence to forecast changing trends in agricultural production and the climate crisis, and now is being used to battle food insecurity around the globe. Or the Nigerian fintech company that created a digital store at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, which allows small businesses around the world to sell their products online. It is in the spirit of all of that that this week the United States Export-Import Bank is entering into a new memoranda of understanding with entities in sub-Saharan Africa, whereby we will provide more than $1 billion to finance American commercial investment in Africa. This, we know and believe, will create jobs and opportunities in various sectors, and in particular, the renewable energy sector, in agriculture, water and sanitation, and infrastructure. In addition, we will launch the African Women's Trade and Investment Initiative, a new program which will help women across Africa participate in e-commerce and access financing and export markets. And that is because we all here know, when you lift up the economic status of women, you lift up the economic status of their children, of their families, and all of society benefits. And so we will also then relaunch the African Women Entrepreneurship Program to provide microfinancing to women to support their ambitions and their aspirations. So, for example, Manada Kone, who owns a cashew processing factory in Burkina Faso, is an alumna of this program. She secured a contract as a supplier for Costco. And when she expanded her factory, she hired more women. She then partnered with Costco to invest in training cashew producers in other villages to help them reach the international marketplace. Another alumna of this program is Israela of Ghana. When she graduated from college, she couldn't find a job. So she went into her savings and started to experiment with cosmetics in her kitchen. She ultimately created a line of natural hair and body care products, and she now exports her products to Asia, Europe, and the United States. Her products are actually sold on Etsy and Amazon if you're looking for them. And she continues to provide vocational training to women in rural communities. Because we know that when we invest in populations that have the incredible capacity of these young leaders, they also take it as part of their personal responsibility to build a legacy so others can follow. And with determination and access to finance, ingenuity knows no bounds. So to invest in the future, we must invest in our young people. And to be effective, we must strengthen a broad coalition between government and community leaders, philanthropic leaders, business leaders, and young leaders. And of course, with the African diaspora, so richly represented in this room. Today, President Biden will sign an executive order to create the President's Advisory Council on African Diaspora Engagement in the United States. This council will provide advice and recommendations to the President to strengthen the ties between the people of Africa and the people of America. By working together, we can unlock growth and opportunity that far exceeds what any of us can achieve alone. But we must invest in this coalition. So let us work together to foster the spark of creativity and ingenuity in Africa's young leaders. Throughout history, in moments of uncertainty and change, the world has often turned to young people to help lead the way forward. Now is no different. So to Africa's young leaders, I say, I am an optimist about what lies ahead for Africa and by extension for the world. Because of you, because of your energy, your ambition, and your ability to transform seemingly intractable problems into opportunities. Simply put, your ability to see what can be unburdened by what has been. I thank you all. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, please take your seats and silence your mobile phones. The program will begin momentarily. Distinguished guests, please take your seats and silence your mobile phones. The program will begin momentarily. Distinguished guests, please take your seats and silence your mobile phones. The program will begin momentarily.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll be continuing with our program momentarily. If you would like to just take a moment to take a seat, we have a video that's upcoming. Thank you so much to everyone who has been enjoying these robust conversations throughout the day. We look forward to continuing with the breakout sessions after this session concludes. So for those of you who were in those various breakout sessions, you will return to the breakout sessions for the second half as soon as we conclude this session. So if you want to take a beat, you will have an opportunity very shortly to transition out, to take a quick break, and also to continue the conversations. Thank you so much. Please be seated.
With a population of 1.3 billion people whose median age is 19 years old, one of Africa's most important resources is its youth. By supporting the Young African Leaders Initiative, or YALI, we work with public, private sector, and civil society partners across the continent to develop initiatives and economic opportunities to harness the innovation and energy of Africa's youth. Since 2015, USAID's YALI Regional Leadership Centers, or RLCs, have collaborated with higher education institutions and the private sector to equip young leaders with the skills to catalyze economic, political, and social change in their home countries. The 4 YALI RLCs, located at higher education institutions in Ghana, Senegal, Kenya, and South Africa, offer experiential leadership training programs to young leaders aged 18 to 35 years in 3 tracks: business and entrepreneurship, public management, and civic leadership. By leveraging resources from the private sector, including US and African companies, the RLCs have graduated more than 22,000 leaders. More than 2,000 applicants seek one of the 100 spots available for each cohort, which reflects an acceptance rate on par with elite universities in the United States. For the graduates, the information and training they receive is important, but the networking with other YALI leaders is invaluable. YALI has produced so many leaders who are already making a difference, not only in their communities, but on a global scale. The number of those leaders continues to grow year after year. The legacy program for the United States government, YALI is an investment in the continent's youth. YALI alumni are the change makers on the continent, and we are proud to support and partner with them as they design their futures.
Hey everyone, so hopefully most of you have started making your way back to your breakout sessions. So if you are remaining in the room for the Creative Industries breakout session, feel free to make your way a little bit closer to the stage and fill in. If you are making your way to the higher education and workforce development or the environmental equity breakout sessions, please do transition to the second floor. So far, we've had a really, really good program. I'm really excited that all of you are here and enjoying, and we're looking forward to many more interactive moments throughout the day. Thanks so much.
Distinguished guests, please take your seats and silence your mobile phones. The program will begin momentarily. Please welcome our panelists and moderator, Audu Mekori, to the stage.
Can we put our hands together? Thank you, thank you. Are you ready? Oh, you guys want water?
Got our water.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Audu Mekori, and I'll be moderating this panel, and we'll be talking about a very exciting topic called music. Who likes music here? Anyone? Anybody loves music? Put up your hands. Okay, so on my right is Ojoma Ochai, and Ojoma, you just quickly introduce yourself, 2 minutes. Tell us about yourself and something that we can Google about you.
My name is Ojoma Ochai. I run an organization that supports music entrepreneurs and other types of creative entrepreneurs across Africa. We run accelerators, incubators, and various types of programs that make creative companies more investment ready. And we also have a syndicate fund through which we invest in create tech companies that are using different emerging and existing technologies in creative sectors. Something that you would not find if you Googled me, contrary to the myth that all black people can dance, I cannot dance to save my life. It doesn't stop me, but I cannot dance. No rhythm. Shame.
Put your hands together for her. At least she's honest. And Sheree Robinson?
I like that it doesn't stop you. That's my favorite part. My name is Sheree Robinson. I was founder and CEO of a tourism technology company called Tastemakers Africa. I am now head of community at Flybridge Capital Partners, an early stage venture capital fund in New York. Something you can not find out about me on Google is that my dad taught me how to DJ, and I DJ quite often in New York City.
And to my left is Moreira. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Moreira Shongisa from Mozambique, Maputo. I'm a saxophonist, producer, composer, and a director of the Maputo International Jazz Festival. I lived 19 years in Cape Town, and I decided to come back to Mozambique 12 years ago to make my government's life a bit difficult because I brought what is called commercial value for art, not for music as such, that we need to live well if you're a great artist, that we need to determine our price, we shouldn't be afraid, and I'm the president of the sector for creative industries at the Mozambican Confederation of Associations of Entrepreneurs. Yeah, more or less that.
Okay, so what is it about you can't Google?
I'm black.
Okay, and last but definitely not least, Ashley Yates. Please introduce yourself.
Peace, y'all. My name is Ashley, but my name is Black Assets. I prefer to be called Miss Black or Black. I'm an artist, a creative, a visionary, a curator. I'm an arts director in Baltimore City of a community arts organization called Jubilee Arts, right on the west side of Baltimore. I'm from Itta Bena, Mississippi, about the smallest town you're gonna see in the valley. If you know Mississippi Valley State University, that's my town. It's the only town that sits right on the university. I'm here about all things music, black music, creativity, freedom. And one thing you can't Google about me is probably that I'm so afraid of frogs. Y'all, I can't stand them in any capacity, so that's probably it. Yeah, it's plenty, too many, okay?
All right, thank you. So the purpose of the panel really is to talk about the music industry and the business of music. And African music, black music is everywhere around the world. I mean, go to any mall in any part of the world, you will hear African music playing. You would hear a Rema or a Diamond Platnumz or a Fally Ipupa, and all these things are happening. But beyond the music, there's an ecosystem that creates jobs, that changes lives, that creates a whole new revenue stream for young people around the world. So this panel will be examining some of the issues, identifying the issues, the challenges, and how we can overcome them. And I'll start with you, Ojoma. You've worked probably about 17, 18 years in the creative economy, and have advised governments, including most recently Jamaica, on the policies. Now, what kind of policies do you think Africa and Africans in diaspora need to grow the music ecosystem, to create the jobs and the wealth that it has potential to?
Thanks. So yes, you're right that I've worked with various governments across Africa, in Nigeria, Gambia, Zimbabwe, various places, and Jamaica, to advise on policy. I think some key things for me. One is when we talk about the creative economy, the economic value is often at the forefront. But I almost ask governments to take a step back first and recognize that music and creativity have dual value. They're the means through which we convey our identity, our worldview, through which we tell the story that we want to tell about ourselves. And I think sticking or being authentic about that culture and about that identity should always be the first step when governments are creating policy, because it's so easy to lose out on that authenticity and that cultural value in a bid to achieve economic benefit. And so it may sound a bit counterintuitive, but I always tell them it can create jobs, but first of all, you need to think about what is it that you want to promote culturally, what is it that you want to enable people to be able to say through their music and through their art. So that's typically the first thing. And then outside of that, it really depends, because it would start with the context. And weirdly, a lot of the contexts are very similar, although everywhere I go, they tell me, oh, you've never seen a place like this before, we're special, and they are. But the issues tend to be things around intellectual property protection, things around skills and capacity, things around funding and access to finance, access to markets, application of technology. So broadly speaking, those are the things. And I always tell them to start with what they've got, right? In a place like Jamaica, they already have quite a strong music industry, and it's trying to look inwards and see why has it worked in the way it has, and how do you build on what has worked, right? And so there isn't any one size fits all, but some broad themes. One, I think, is about systems and institutions, because I find in many of our developing contexts, we tend to build our creative industries around personalities and celebrity, which you cannot have creative industries without that. But we have to have systems and institutions that work, right? Whether it's institutions that are working on royalty collection for artists, or whether it's institutions that are doing training, or institutions that are supporting people working in the back end in technical skills or entrepreneurship and all of that kind of stuff. I say to them, you need to focus on building and strengthening institutions. Another thing I always say is about thinking long term. I talk about capacity building a lot, and the company that I run, we do a lot of capacity building. But the fact is, with technology and in the world that we inhabit, it's global competition, right? We cannot build an industry based on 2-week masterclasses, I always say to people. So what's the depth of institutions that are training people, providing apprenticeships, helping young people from the age of 16 to get some work experience? What are those in-depth, long-term things that will develop the skills and the capacity? So those are some of the things I say. It's about institutions, it's about long-term planning, it's about a vision for what it is you want to be able to express, because the value of creativity and music is just beyond jobs and economic growth. It's also, what story do you want to tell through the music?
Amazing. Thank you. So when Sheree was saying that her dad taught her to DJ, I was laughing, because if you came from where I came from in Nigeria, your father will flog you if you say you want to do music business. That was impossible.
Exactly.
But it's changed. Now people are actively pushing their kids to study and to do stuff in the music industry. Now, Sheree, you have an interesting history, because you started with Tastemakers, which was hugely successful. It was a company that did things around tourism and experiences, and then merged with music. And now you're on the investment side. Now you're getting funding for companies in the creative sector. What are the challenges, first of all, you faced starting of your company and raising funding? Because the biggest issue we all know is always about how do you get access to the funding, right? So what challenges did you face, and how do you overcome them, and what do entrepreneurs need to know about how to attract the big money?
Yeah, I think when I first started out, some of it was just like geography. I was an American entrepreneur building a tech company focused on travel in Africa. And I started in 2014, which was the same year that there was an Ebola outbreak in West Africa. And that was when I was saying, yeah, I'm raising money for a travel company. And so I think at first it was just the problem with narrative. US perception of the continent in 2014, although that doesn't seem that long ago, was diametrically different than it is in 2022. Like, we have made leaps and bounds, and music, to be, in my opinion, has been a huge reason why we've been able to make these leaps. You didn't have Burna Boy selling out MSG. Like, these things were not happening in 2014. And so some of it was just perception of the market, of safety, like these things we hear over and over again, was just at a different pitch than it was now. Some of it was connectivity. I was a biology major. I came up working in civil society organizations who didn't go to a fancy business school. I went to Morgan State University in Baltimore. So I didn't know people in venture capital. And so I didn't have the network. And what was interesting is my first investors actually came from the continent. So I was an African-American entrepreneur hearing everyone on the continent saying we can't raise money. I couldn't raise money in America. My first investors were from Nigeria and South Africa. And then they were the first startup competition I won was She Leads Africa in Lagos. And so my infancy as an entrepreneur came through Africa's startup ecosystem, not the American technology ecosystem, because they didn't get it. And so there was just a perception gap. And so half of my work was like the operational work of building this company that really was built off of the network of the creative economy and turning creators into tour guides, because that's actually what people wanted to see. And then the other half of my business was changing the perception of the continent through media, storytelling, and music. So people would land, and the first thing we'd do is give them a mixtape from that country. Like, that was our first entry point. So those were the challenges I faced as an entrepreneur raising capital. And now that I kind of got to the other side of, getting some millions, getting some folks involved, it's really about telling your story in terms investors understand. A lot of us are, especially in the creative industry, a lot of us are passionate folk. And so we tell our stories with so much passion, but oftentimes we undersell the value of that because no one's taught us how to translate it. And so for me, it was like I had to convince these largely white, middle-aged men on like why a culture-forward platform on travel to Africa was a disruptor in the industry. And that meant I had to walk them along the story from a point of I know nothing. Oftentimes we know our businesses, so we start in the middle. But you're often talking to people that don't know your businesses at all. So you have to start from the beginning, and you have to really think about like the economic impact of the ecosystems you're building. Most Black people, no matter where you are in the world, can't build businesses without community. Like, because you have to. You don't have those extra buy-ins, so you have to start at home. In the startup world right now, people are paying literally thousands of dollars a month to learn how to build community in their startups. Meanwhile, that's our superpower, because that's how we exist, even from a cultural, historic place. Like, we are community builders. And so a lot of it is taking the time to translate the true value of your work. And sometimes that means research. Sometimes that means language that you're not always using. Sometimes that means being more concise. Sometimes that means finding business partners who might not come from the same background as you so you can communicate your team. All of those things help position you, because you have to speak the same language in order to convey the value. You can't speak language that people don't know.
Okay, great. I'll come back to you because I have follow-up questions around fundraising in particular, right? But I think a crucial part of the conversation is actually about capacity building, right? Moray right here is a phenomenal jazz musician. and he is a self-confessed student of people like Manu Dibango, Fela Kuti, and a bunch of other people. And in a sense, you kind of you were mentored by them by watching what they did, and that's helped you in your career. What would you say is the role of mentorship and training and education to have a successful music career, whether as a musician itself or somebody working in the music business?
It's a very complicated and complex situation, because you can bring your experience and all the tools, focus on the young people. Like, I'm a young privileged African, that's what I call myself. I had access to education. I'm very lucky and I'm blessed. Manu Dibango, my mentor, late Yuma Sikela, the patron of my festival. I'm lucky. But my question, I'm lucky living where? Living in Mozambique, right? That I came back as a young country, 47 years old, a country under pressure. In 47 years, my country suffers. People, the world wants Mozambique to behave like a secular nation. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So now, when we take these skills and we go to young people, I'm very proud of the young people in Mozambique. They're producing the most amazing content. But there is a contradiction with the legislation in the country. Do you understand? Because now we have something called SOMAS, which is the regulator that collects the royalties, right? But do you really think that 40 years no one collected royalties? You're going to go to the hotels that play music, television stations, are they going to pay? There is a contradiction, but at the same time, we are fighting and the kids are ready for it. So it's a very complicated, and sometimes I feel bad because I said, I've been cheating to these young people. Because now they're 18, they went to study in Cape Town. Then we have a situation, Mozambique has a border with South Africa. And you go to South Africa, you find a very structured, creative industry. I'm not saying that it's perfect, but sorry, it's very structured. I lived there 19 years. You spoke about investment. My first investor is also from South Africa. Okay? They believed in me. We created a label. I'm here. People look and see this. But there is a contradiction, because now, how do I apply technically what I've been taught if the legislation doesn't go according to? Do you get what I'm trying to say? But then you have a government and that wants to do, but then you have a private sector that still believes that, I won't speak about music, that culture, it's a social thing. Do you get what I'm saying? It's social. We don't pay. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So I live in a contradiction in a way, because I got the best, my career is exposed everywhere in the world, but now I really thank the opportunity for being here, because I come from a Portuguese-speaking country, okay? Coming from a Portuguese-speaking country, which all neighbors speak English. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Not a single country speaks Portuguese. But here, it's a festival of Nigeria. It's a festival of Cameroon. It's a festival of Liberia. It's a festival of Ghana. I say, hey, where's Mozambique, man? When the vice president spoke about 100 million for Ghana, I say, hey, where's Mozambique? Geopolitics.
So is Mozambique in the house?
Yes, yeah, I'm here.
But yeah, so we have one question there. Okay, all right.
Cabo Verde is the same situation. But then Cabo Verde has an advantage going back to location, right? Because they are in the north, they are closer to America, they are close to West Africa, etc., etc. So what I'm trying to say, I'm not playing a victim. I'm just actually taking advantage of this to say, for me here, to be here, closer to black, closer to you, you know, it's unheard of having a Portuguese-speaking person in the middle of Anglo-Saxon. Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's a big win. And all the information I've collected here, listen, the American, they built this amazing embassy in Mozambique. It's huge, beautiful, beautiful. I think it brought commercial value to the city. I said, that's fantastic. That's amazing. There's dollars there. Do you understand? So those are the things that we need for my country because of the colonization we had. Because if you look, you spoke about Fela. Where did Fela explode?
Yeah.
If you spoke about Youssou, where did he explode? France. If you speak about Salif Keita, what I'm trying to say, the old colonies have a role to play as well on the exposure of that big stage, and which Mozambicans don't really have. Even Cabo Verde, if you speak about Cesária Évora, it wasn't Portugal, it was France that made it. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So what I'm trying, there is a contradiction. At this moment, it's in parliament in Mozambique. the law to define the status of the artists on the 21st century. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So I don't exist in the law. Like, I'm an artist. I don't exist, but the architects exist. So just to say to you that we are not going to stop. We are working, but my country is under pressure. Everybody wants, it's like a little child who is 5 years old and you want it to behave like an 18. I'm not protecting them, you understand? Everybody wants the oil and gas from Mozambique. Everybody wants the graphite. Tesla is buying the graphite from Mozambique. The coal from Total Gas, everybody. But then we say, hey man, the legislation, okay, we're willing to do, then come health, then we have cyclones. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So everything goes slow. It's a contradiction because 43% of the Mozambican population is from 0 to 15. It's a lot. We are 30 million. Can you make, if there's someone good in maths, 43% from 0 to 15 out of 30 million. It's what the Vice President was speaking about, the boom in Africa, the youngest continent, etc. So it's a positive contradiction that I believe with platforms like this and the experience you have and the American experience, we will surpass.
Well said, thank you. Just to say, so I'm from Nigeria, maybe obviously. And we had a similar experience as well, because people talk about Nigerian and Afrobeat music, but it wasn't, there was no real government support. It was actually in spite of the government that it succeeded.
Yes.
The second thing is that music has no language. It's the only language in the world that has no language where people can understand. So whether you're speaking Portuguese or French or whatever, people listen to Nigerian songs. I'm not Yoruba. I don't know how the hell the things they're saying, right? But it's really around the rhythm and how it's communicated. So I just want to encourage you that even though it's a slow start, it will happen as long as the people are united and they're focused on growing that industry.
Yes.
You know, so I want to applaud what you're doing, but don't give up, because eventually the world will hear about Mozambique. And next time we're here, it'll be 5,000 Mozambicans, right?
Thank you, man.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
And Black Assets, you're a remarkable person for many reasons. You write, you produce, you even do the cover art of your work. And she does this I don't know what's called, LFR something, but it's a panel that empowers people. And she's had 75 editions that attended by over 200 people. So that's collectively about 15,000 people over the past couple of years. Please put your hands together for her. She's amazing. And one of the things that she's really passionate about is giving Black music recognition and building bridges. So my question to you is really around, what do you think are the impediments of building bridges? Because he also talks about that, right? So how do we cross borders with the Black, African, American, whatever genre you call it, music?
I feel like we're privileged to have music as the universal language, like we've spoken about. There's so many things that need to be said between, you know, the Black American person and African culture, where we are from, etc. You know, my father's Nigerian. I was not raised very close to him. I was raised in Mississippi with my mother. But there are things that I can't articulate that I feel connected to. Things that I can't quite explain. You know, my name is Adewumi. It's my grandmother's name. You know, to figure out what these things mean, why this is this way. I think that music gives us this secret power, this superpower, this cheat code, if you will, to connect a history that has been stripped from a people, to reconnect us, to figure out why our rhythms hit the way they do, or feel the way they do. The world is finally getting hip to Afrobeat. But if y'all notice the percussion across the diaspora, it's been there, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of just like, I went to Africa the first time in February, North Africa. In my first week, I'm known as being a vocalist. I sing songs very well. My first week, first time I sang, I was broadcasted over 100 different countries in the continent, 50 different articles in 3 to 4 days of just doing things I do every day here? Why is it something that why is it more valued in some spaces? Why is the network that powerful that in 1 week, what I've put into my entire life here in America can literally pay tenfold immediately? It was so tangible. And I think that's why I'm here right now. You know, I sing the songs, but I've been doing that all my life. Here in America, like you spoke of, we don't have the system networks. We get skipped over. You don't understand why our music feels the way it does. Why soul feel? Why did I feel this in my stomach? Why can I feel the rhythm immediately and then my body just moves, you know? But when you go for something about Africa, as soon as you put that right there, it's like every soul kind of feels it at the same time. It's something else. We kind of recognize the value in that thing, and then we don't just recognize it. We want to say, okay, well, how can we make it make sense as well? The world needs to hear this as well. I'm going to back it then. And when your people see that value in you, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm unstoppable now. So when I think about bridging the gap, I feel like more Black artists need to feel that. We're chasing an industry that don't make no sense to us here, or they don't want to see us here. When it's literally my colleagues and my friends can make careers in this industry, in Africa, every day. And so my grandmother told me as well, you know, music is not a career. As soon as I went to Morgan, I said to Grandma, I'm gonna sing classically at first, and then I'm gonna go and do Elsa. She said, music is not a career. So I doubled back and got the social work degree as well, but still, you know, I had to do both. But I just speak to the fact that it is important for Black people to know that our voice is also just as powerful in Africa. Why can't we know that? Why is it so far? Why is it so like, it's seemingly like something we can't grasp, like we can't go home? Like, I don't understand. So I speak to bridging the gap, and I do that by being the example. I go, I do the thing, and this is what I've done. I come back, this is how you fill out this application to do X, Y, and Z. You go and do the same thing. That's my method. I do and become and create the blueprint.
Very good. Very powerful. Thank you so much. So, I mean, statistics show that 84% of the streaming income that goes to African music comes from the US. 85%. So it means that the consumption locally is literally less than 15%. So who's making the money? The Spotifys, the Facebooks, the streaming platforms. So there's clearly a problem with how local music is distributed. For many years, piracy was rampant, and so people didn't make money off of the records at all. And so artists were poor, the industry was poor, and that's why it looked like a joke. For the first time, people were actually monetizing from streaming platforms. Unfortunately, the streaming platforms are not owned by Black people or Africans. So, Ojoma, you recently joined the board of the Bitcoin board with Jack Dorsey and Jay-Z. Please put your hands together for it. That's huge. That's huge. So clearly there is a nexus between tech, music, and the business itself. What do you think are the ways we can help to ameliorate this situation?
So I'll just take you back for a second. So you talked about 84% of the streaming revenue coming from North America. My view, and not just my view, research. So I spent 18 months or so looking at the digital environment for the global creative industries. And it's in a report, you can check it out. It's the UNESCO 2022 Reshaping Global Creativity Report. And I wrote the chapter on the digital environment for creativity. And the thing about consumption of music in a place like Africa, it will not show up in your report because it's tracking revenues. It does not mean that people are not consuming, right? So I think that just on that point, one of the things we need to figure out is the monetization rather than the consumption, right? People are listening to the music, they're consuming the music, they're sharing it on WhatsApp groups alongside all of the really bizarre messages that our parents send. they're consuming it in various ways. So I think to your question, about how can we use technology, we need to figure out what are the monetization models that work for the continent.
Yes, yes.
What are the monetization models that can leverage things like WhatsApp and other sort of invisible consumption that's happening. And that's a critical thing that we need to figure out. Something else that we're really interested in is the ownership and the development of technologies. Because we see that technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence, platforms, whether it's for consumption or aggregating marketplaces, all of those things exist, and e-commerce. And we get a bit of it, right? Because suddenly we have a bit more channels to distribute. But who is building these technologies? What are we investing in to enable people have the capacities to build these technologies? Are we waiting for someone else to figure it out so that we can use it? And these are conversations we have on the continent every time. Like, who's going to build that mobile distribution platform that will enable, one, the consumption to be more visible, but to enable artists get paid? So I think when we're thinking about capacity building and skills and education relating to the creative industries on the continent, we need to be thinking about the emerging technologies that are disrupting the way that these creative products are created, consumed, and distributed, and invest in the capability to do that on the continent as well. I say to people, and I'll come to the blockchain and the Bitcoin thing in a second. I say to people, it's nice to be able to get a few more $1,000 because I've distributed my music on a streamer. You know what would be nicer? To own the streaming platform. And I feel like we don't talk enough about that and investing in those base capabilities that elevate us from just being the product and the consumer to being the creator of the thing that's adding the most value. So my involvement with B-Trust is, as a board member, B-Trust is an organization that was set up with an endowment from Jay-Z, the musician. I feel odd when I say Jay-Z, the musician, like, what else would it be? Yeah, I know. Jay-Z, the banker. It was set up by an endowment from Jay-Z and Jack Dorsey, the co-founder of Twitter and CEO of Block, to support Bitcoin development in Africa and in other parts of the global south. And the reason why that interests me is because it's about coding and development skills. If you know anything about Bitcoin, it's based on code, essentially. I'm simplifying it massively. But the people that write this code are often white North American men of a certain age, right? In this case, not middle age, slightly younger. But there's a real lack of diversity in terms of the underlying infrastructure and technology for Bitcoin. And so what we're trying to do is bring in more diversity, more Africans working on that base protocol, which is aligned with what I'm saying about, it's not just about us consuming what has been built, it's about how we're building the thing that's going to change the world. And we do believe that Bitcoin is one of those technologies that will, subvert oppression, enhance business models for a lot of creative products. But let's not wait until it is built to consume. And so that's what we try to do, is support developers to work on open source Bitcoin projects. Essentially what we do is we give grants to developers and enable them earn a living, essentially, while they're working on those open source projects that are the future of Bitcoin. And last week in Accra, we had our very first Africa Bitcoin conference. We had our first African Bitcoin conference, which was really inspiring. There must have been 1,000 people from across the continent that are building on Bitcoin and building companies and coding and building technologies that are based on Bitcoin. So I think for us, it's about the creativity, as you were saying, but in addition to the creativity, where's the business, where's the tech, and how can we capture more value from our creative industries beyond just, a few more distribution outlets here and there? How can we be building the future, patents, technologies that will affect fashion, animation, gaming? Who's building those things, and can we invest in that capacity now so that we can reap the rewards in the future?
Thank you. And Ojoma, you whispered to me before the panel that there'll be a Bitcoin music platform being launched sometime next year. Is that correct?
You know, there was a reason I whispered.
Okay, going to you, Sheree. Really, and it seems that investors are more comfortable with that. Sheree, you're now wearing the hat, not of the DJ, but the investor. And the question is that why aren't you putting more resources to not just diversity, but also in that space of creating, amazing platforms?
Yeah, so one, just +1 to everything you said, like the way it was just in my spirit. Like, as a person who decided to be an owner, I didn't want to just put African tours on Expedia. I wanted to create my own damn Expedia. It's infrastructure though. You need a coder. You need to be able to scale operations. We are at on the continent, we're at such, and I say we because I lived there for almost a decade in different countries, so I feel like I can say we. But on the continent, we are even if you look at the flight routes on the continent, they're still built to take out. They're not built to go within. And so if you look at that as the framework for business on the continent, it is an extractive setup. And in an extractive setup, you're not getting the skills you need to scale up vertically within. And so when I think about your question, even in my own business, one of the biggest reasons I shut my business down was on the other side of COVID, we lost so much operationally that I couldn't see scaling it back up to being the business I was building pre-COVID. I worked on that for 7 years. It was my life's work. And I just was like, without that level of leadership that I could, that had working in a startup, an early stage startup, in many cases requires you to have money. That startup has $1 million. The founders got to pay their bills. They're trying to distribute it, and you're trying to spread that out across engineers, and then you got to travel to be meeting investors. So you're inherently asking people to make less money and to believe in equity as a value when we don't have Black Mark Zuckerberg yet. So a system of people that has seen this behavior repeat in their communities can say, yeah, I can take less money because I see it. We don't have as many examples of the big payout. And so people don't want to take that risk. You're there trying to convince someone that you're in Lagos and you're trying to convince someone that is super sharp to come join your company that's going to be the quote unquote Spotify for Nigeria. Meanwhile, Spotify is trying to take that person to run the Africa music business at Spotify with a 10 times bigger paycheck.
Yeah.
And so we really struggle to be in the ownership position. The ideas are there. The passion is there. But you can't build a business without a team. FinTech has figured it out because the funding is going into FinTech. Why? Because financial innovation helps capitalism. And so that's why the money's going there.
Nice.
So I think it's a really layered answer to, like, companies need teams. It's hard for startups to have teams on the continent, teams that have the right skills. And then we also need education. That goes back to like my earlier conversation, and it sounds like what a lot of Ogioma's doing is helping tell the story of value and scale. So look at media business value and scale. Look at who the market is. If the market is both local and global, how do you actually show that?
Yeah.
What's that total addressable market that is intersectional because it's the local consumer and its diaspora? No other community of people have that in the same exact way. So it's a really long-winded answer, but that's what I have to say on that.
Well, thank you. Well said. So we have only about 7 minutes, so we're going to be rounding up. We'll take a question, but we'll come to Moreira and Ashley first. And quickly, Moreira, you're an activist, clearly. You've been doing that. Your president is here, right?
Yeah.
As part of leadership. In what way do you think we can use music to really advocate for change, right? Because when you think about Fela Kuti and these guys, or Youssou N'Dour and all these other great iconic artists, they also stood for something beyond just the music. In what way do you think we can use this platform to effect change across the continent? And also build bridges with diaspora as well?
I think being real look at what's music. Music is a reflection of your personality, of what you see, what you live in that moment. If you are happy, if you are unhappy, if you want to dream, just being honest. But we have to be very, very careful. The times of Fela and the times today, we have the same nuances, but people behave differently to it. So I tell young people, it's important for you to express yourself, but remember, you don't want to confuse the customer. Are you a commercial brand, or is just a social brand, an activist? You know, because you need to eat at the end of the day. Do you understand what I'm saying? So one thing is like, I'm an artist, I'm a commercial, then I have my foundation, I do my social responsibility, right? I don't want to be known as a person when people see me say, oh, is that guy always complaining about life? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so you know, when we're young, we are naive. It's nice to be young, right? We want immediate things. So, but in the long term, Rolex say, hey, no, that guy, you understand, but they like you. Yeah. So, of course, the answer to you is being honest. You just be honest to yourself. You know, find a way of using metaphors to express yourself without being so judgmental. And there is sophisticated ways. And you spoke about musicians like Youssou, like even Salif, so Papa Manu, Dibango. So I think you just have to be honest to yourself. But education is crucial because you only understand metaphors. You should have some basic education as well. Education, I don't mean to go to school, but a good base, you know, a nice ecosystem. Because when you play with words, you play with sounds. At the end of the day, we are a product. This person wants to buy us, you know. Everything is for sale, you know. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. And really quickly, Ashley, one thing that you're really passionate about is building bridges. You've said that before. You've demonstrated that with the platforms you created. Is there an artist today on the continent of Africa you'd love to do a song with? And who's that person and why?
On the continent?
Yeah.
And again, it's black.
What?
Black.
Yeah.
I believe there's an artist named Miriam Alsop. She sings a lot about revolution. I just found out about her this year. I like Blinky.
He's the best.
That's a good friend. We're working on something. He's a good brother.
So guess what? She knows Blinken. So you guys need to connect.
Yeah, I just met Blinky a couple months ago.
Oh, you did?
Ran out, yeah.
So do I get 10% for doing
you got to get my name right first. Yeah, Nigel Woman, I'm sorry. And then also, I'm not too shy to say I absolutely love Burna. Any opportunity I could, any opportunity. But
so let's make that happen.
Let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen. So this time next year we'll be launching an album featuring Aldu and maybe you guys as well with Burna Boy.
Dancing.
What do you think? Makes sense.
Do the track.
All right, cool.
It's gonna feel good.
Well, sure. Okay, so we'll take one more question. One person. So I actually, there are two hands, so I'll take you really quickly, and if this time we'll take you as well. Yeah, the mic's coming. Really quickly, we have literally 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Peniel Ibe, Nigerian. Huge fan of Mozambicans. One of my best friends are Mozambican. My question is just about the education piece. So we're talking music, film, all of that. And I went through the Nigerian education system and have sort of heard about others, and it's sort of an afterthought. Music was after our lessons, drama was like extracurricular activities, cooking was for the girls, it was home economics, like it was just always othered. What are you doing in your different sort of fields or networks to encourage the government, since you're giving them a hard time, to make it mainstream and encourage it to just be another part of learning other than just math and English?
Amazing. And then maybe quickly, the gentleman, so we can just take it and close
Like
out.
whichever ones we can.
Really quickly.
Hi, Hame Banti, aka Zeus from Botswana. Given the platform, from Botswana. Okay. I think it's interesting to speak about AGOA, the African Growth Opportunities Act. Early on, it seemed the big focus was always around manufacturing. Whereas if we're talking about creative industries, if we're talking about youth, intellectual property is huge, you know, especially in a modern era of doing business, you know? So what are we saying about the new strategy? And I know maybe this might be for the officials more than it is in terms of government reps, but maybe what would you want to see out of a new approach to that kind of exporting of intellectual property?
All right, cool. So what we'll do is you both take the first question, and then maybe you two take the last question.
I think I'm very much so interested in the first question.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's do it like ladies first. So
Yes,
you go ahead and
thank
you
you.
guys just...
I think that's such a powerful question. I think now people can't deny that music makes sense financially. It has always been something that is second-handed because our route to success has been STEM. No matter what, you want to go be a doctor, be this, be an architect, that has been the route. It is successful for all of my family beyond this. But now, you get to this success and realize that you're missing a thing or something is not being fully fulfilled, or maybe you were a writer as a child, but this thing has been suppressed. But now we're finding that this avenue for music, creative works, are lucrative and can change, lives. So I think right now the only way for me that I have been able to come from behind the wall of math and science and STEM has been to succeed in the field of music. That's the only thing that's made my family look at it different. My community, my peers, my colleagues, my mentees now believe that they have a chance to do a thing. Also, music has taken me further than geography, miles, I'm talking literal steps, further than any avenue. I've gone to the schools, gotten all the degrees I could possibly get, but music has taken me 20s of thousands of miles away from the world to sow back into myself and my community. So I think succeeding in those fields, also being persistent, not stopping the thing, is probably going to be the step that makes us take music seriously across the world.
All right, great. So we literally have 30 seconds, so we have to be really quick because they'll kick us out in 10 seconds. So maybe we'll just go this way and just...
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Be loud. Louder. Yesterday there was a dinner hosted for my president. I walked in with a saxophone. Then he said, aren't you going to play? I played loud. Every advert I've done for banks, I have the saxophone. Everybody said, the saxophone is a white instrument. Oh, really? Okay. Every kid wants to play the saxophone, no guitar, no more. Just be loud. Be present. Take it. Grab it. That's it.
I'll do like a 2-for-1. I'll answer your question as a mom. So my son is a trombonist. He goes to an arts high school in Brooklyn. In New York City, music programs are being stripped from regular education, specifically in Black and brown communities. So the thing that is our heartbeat is often being stripped and deprioritized. I made the decision to allow my child to focus on music. And I think as parents, we have to demand music education, and we have to elevate our children's creative pursuits in the same way, especially as Black and brown parents. We have to rid ourselves of our assimilationist tendencies and actually allow our kids to be all that they want to be. And so that's my answer on that. And on AGOA, I think it goes back to trade investment and who's making the money make sense. And then translate that into policy, folks. I think they did a great job of centering creative conversations here today. These are the same people that are having input into AGOA and where AGOA goes. And so I'm hoping we're on the right path.
Great.
And my quick response is the reason why I always say to governments, you need to think about both the cultural value and the economic value is because, it's one thing to demonstrate, and it's important to demonstrate that music gives you success, but music also just helps us be who we are, right? And so I think the more that we can recognize that our art, our music, our history is just, such a deep part of ourselves that we must never let loose. The more we can recognize that, the more we can embed it into our education systems. And I think there's a growing awareness, there's a growing strategic awareness of us as Africans being able to tell our own story. And when I say us as Africans, I will echo what the president of Ghana said, every Black person everywhere is African. That's who I mean, right? And so I think the more we have that strategic awareness that the art and music are the way that we express ourselves and share our narratives and worldviews, the more we demand it in the most fundamental aspect of our lives, like the education of our children.
Great. And let me round up by just saying to that, I'm an attorney, and I started my career with civil litigation, and then I started doing pro bono work. So the first artist I helped out had a contract that didn't have a termination date, basically, so I got him out of the contract. Since then, I've fought over the past 13 years, maybe over 13 years, we worked on the Copyright Act in Nigeria, but more importantly, around CMOs, collecting management organizations. And we got that passed in 2010 after like 13 years of no collection. So that's happening. But I think most importantly is platforms like this and sharing videos like this to other people, because people don't have enough information. And it seems that there's nobody creating or curating content that focuses on teaching people. So on our part, what we do a lot of these panels. There's a platform we have, Music Week Nigeria, Music Week Africa. They're all educational platforms. But having said that, we need you who are out there. Yeah, and then the AGOA question, you said, which is very important, is that Vice President Kamala Harris announced a new initiative. I think it's important that there needs to be lobby people from the creative economy to talk about those practices, the policies, the tax incentives, and all those other things they can do to encourage the growth of music across the world. With that said, thank you guys for listening to our panel, and on behalf of my colleagues, I want to say thank you very much and have a good day.